Subcommittee will come to order. We're here to receive testimony from Secretary Kerry about the Foreign Operations Subcommittee on Appropriations budget. Glad to have Senator Mikulski. She'll make an opening statement, but I'll start. The Secretary has a hard stop in 2 hours, so we'll make sure everybody can ask questions. I want to thank the members of the subcommittee on both sides for being so active, so involved. I want to thank those who serve in the diplomatic corps. You don't get the recognition you deserve. You're an instrument of power as much as anybody in the military. You serve in very dangerous environments, and I just want to let you know that the soft power aspect of American foreign policy is just as important as hard power. This subcommittee is 1% of the federal budget, give or take a bit. We've had a 12% cut since 2010. The world has not justified us spending less in terms of engaging the world. Sequestration relief is much appreciated, but we need to get this behind us because this account gives us options. If you don't want to bomb everybody and you don't want to be in a constant state of war, you need tools in the toolbox. So the progress we've made with AIDS and malaria and engaging the world, particularly in Africa, has been astonishing. And I want to thank all the members of the Republican Democratic Party for seeing this count in a new light. I want to thank Secretary Kerry for his tireless work, and I'm going to quickly inventory the world as I see it. It is a very dangerous world. There have been over 60 million refugees displaced in the last 5 to 6 years. In Syria alone, 4.7 million, 2.6 million in Turkey, over 1 million in Lebanon, 640,000 in Jordan, is probably actually more than that, 245,000 in Iraq, 117,000 in Egypt. Libya is becoming a failed state. The Syrian conflict, I hope we can get a ceasefire, but we'll hear more about that. I just want the world to know, and those who are seeking the highest office in the land, you better understand what's going on out there. Syria is a cancer for the region, and I very much worry that the next president needs to have a vision of the world consistent with the dangers that we face, and this account is an essential tool. The Iranian agreement, whether you like it or not, the behavior since the agreement by the Iranians outside their nuclear compliance has been disturbing, to say the least. There are just multiple fronts, multiple friction points. Russia's involvement in Syria, along with the Iranians, is of great concern to me. North Korea seems to be marching down the road of developing technology, missile technology, that can reach out and strike the homeland. 5 years, March 15th, is the anniversary of the Syrian conflict. When the people in Syria marched in the streets to demand a better life, I would say the world in general did not respond. There's no use blaming any one group. Secretary Kerry's speech, but when Assad crossed the red line, I think was your high point. Certainly one of them, where you laid out the case of why Assad should be dealt with forcibly after he used chemical weapons on his own people and what he had done prior to that point. We are where we are, and I have never been more worried about a strike on the homeland than I am today. There are more terrorist organizations with men's weapon capability and safe havens to hit the homeland than any time since 9/11, and this account is very important in terms of trying to bring stability to the world. So I hope we can find a way to plus up this account. And if you don't look at it as national security in another form, you're making a huge mistake. Senator Lay has been a joy to work with. I really appreciate our collaboration. And Ms. Secretary, well, you certainly have my promise and pledge to help you get the money you need and the flexibility you deserve to deal with the problems that are growing. Whatever we can do in this account, we will do. But let me sort of inventory what awaits the next president and what this committee should be thinking about. Libya, is Libya a failed state now?
It's close. It's not. The reason I would say to you, not at this moment, is that we have been working really hard for the last months particularly to bring together a government in Tripoli. And we have a prime minister designate. We have a government now chosen. We have a couple of outliers that are resisting this effort. If they cannot get themselves together, yes, it will be a failed state.
So what do you think it would cost in terms of the world community if we could ever get a resolution to put Libya back together?
Well, the virtue of it, Mr. Chairman, is that Libya is a wealthy nation. Libya has some $60 billion.
So you don't think it would cost us a whole
It
lot?
shouldn't cost
Okay.
us a whole lot.
Okay.
Libya can pay for its own
Okay.
rebuilding of its
If
country.
we can ever get it rebuilt.
It's only 6 million people.
Right. What about Yemen? Is Yemen a failed state?
Yemen right now is more than a failed state. It's a growing humanitarian challenge. My hope is, in the most recent conversations I've had with the Saudis, with the Omanis, with the Emiratis and others, I believe there may be a ripeness for trying to move forward on a political resolution. The Saudis have well protected their borders. They, together with the Emiratis and the coalition, they've effectively pushed back the threat that existed. I believe there is a way now, but the key is to get the parties, the Hadi government and the Houthi.
Is Iran being helpful?
Beg your pardon?
Are the Iranians been helpful?
They have said, yeah, they have declared that they are prepared to be and are ready to try to find this political settlement.
Are the Iranians helpful in Syria?
Well, when you say helpful, the Iranians have obviously supported the Houthi and been involved in the other side of the fence with respect to what we're trying to do in Yemen. So in Yemen, while they are indicating now a readiness settlement, they have been part of the problem.
How much would it cost?
In Syria, they've been a huge part, obviously. The IRGC,
Let's
the
go back
support
to
for
Yemen.
Hezbollah, the support for Assad
Yes, sir.
are extremely...
Let's go back to Yemen. We don't have an embassy in Yemen any longer, is that correct? Mm-hmm. We don't have one in Libya.
That's correct.
So we're going to have to go back. I want to know what that would cost if we ever get back there. How much money do you think it will cost the American people, or you would recommend to the American people to put Yemen back together, or can the region pay for that?
The region will pay for that. The Saudis have indicated that if
Okay.
they achieve the agreement that they hope to achieve, they're ready to rebuild Yemen, and I don't think it will cost America.
Okay. Is it fair to say that the Russians have bombed the people we've trained to oppose Assad?
Yes.
Is it fair to say that the Iranians have come to Assad's aid with military advisors and providing him weapons and equipment?
Yes.
Is it fair to say that Assad must go?
Yes.
Is it fair to say that the Russians and the Iranians are going to insist upon what follows Assad?
Insist.
Have a say.
Have a say, yes. Insist, I believe there's
Have a
a
say.
real challenge, but they will have a say.
Is it fair to say that the people we've been training and equipping have been at a military disadvantage compared to Assad and his military forces because of Russia and Iran?
Sure.
Is it fair to say that whatever negotiating power you may have or they may have has been lessened because Assad is being reinforced by the Russian and the Iranian intervention?
Well, it's changed. It's obviously changed the table, but let me just say to everybody, nobody here should be surprised that Russia is engaged and supportive, nor Iran. Because
Were
they
you
always have.
surprised when the Russians went into Syria using military force to bomb the people we trained?
I was not surprised that the Russians
I was
decided-
flabbergasted. I
Well,
was
the
just
reason-
completely flabbergasted they would stick it in our eye like that, but that's just
Well,
me.
Senator, if I could just
Please.
sort of lay this out to you. Russia had been indicating us for some period of time concern about the growth of Chechens. More than 2,000, 2,500 Chechens are fighting on the side of Daesh in Syria. And they are deeply concerned because of the experience with Chechnya as well as their Muslim population.
My time is short, so why haven't they bombed the Chechen more than the Syrian opposition? Who have they bombed the most? ISIL-aligned people or the Assad opposition?
Mr. Chairman, some of this we should deal with in a classified
Well,
session.
I'll just
But let
say
me-
this,
but let
Mr.
me-
Secretary,
well, I'll
that
give
they
you the
have
answer.
bombed the hell out of the people supporting.
70 to 80% of the bombing has including an area in the northeast where Nusra and our moderate opposition have been in very close proximity.
Did you welcome the Russian involvement in Syria militarily?
No,
Did you tell them, please don't do it?
we pushed back significantly, as you recall, in the early days, but the decision was made, and they undertook to do what they needed.
Post-agreement with Iran, do you think the Iranians have changed their behavior in the region for the better since the nuclear agreement?
I think the only thing the nuclear agreement was about Mr. Chairman, was about getting rid of a nuclear weapon,
I agree.
which is why we left
Right.
the human rights sanctions, the missile sanctions, the arms sanctions, and the terrorism support sanctions in place.
Would you support more sanctions by the Congress against their violation of the UN resolutions against their missile program? Haven't they twice?
We just put sanctions in place.
But did they, I mean, what you put on, I consider almost nothing. I have a list a mile long. Would you support Congress's effort to let the Iranians know how disappointed we are in their behavior?
Well, we already let them know how disappointed they are, and we've warned
Now,
them.
my
that
question is,
further
would you
launches-
welcome Congress's
I
support?
wouldn't welcome them at this moment in time, given the fact that we've given them a warning, and if they decide to do another launch, then I think
Ms.
there's a
Secretary,
rationale.
they apparently could care less about what you and others are saying. They just put our sailors, you know, they held our sailors in contempt of international law. I don't mean to be argumentative,
Chairman,
but the Iran Sanctions Act expires this year. Would you welcome Congress reauthorizing it?
Mr. Chairman, let me just answer your question there for a minute. As a former Navy guy who commanded a small boat like that, I'm pretty sensitive to what happened and what went on and somewhat interested in it. Our guys, regrettably, found themselves in Iranian waters. And they found themselves in Iranian waters either without power or in distress in some way. So, yes, they were approached by an Iranian boat and they were taken into custody. We never saw the films of them with their hands behind their back and on their knees until well after we had released them. I was on the phone to the foreign minister of Iran within 5 minutes of learning this upstairs in the State Department, went straight to my phone, called the foreign minister, and I gave him a very direct statement about what would happen if we didn't have their release very quickly. And I also urged him to not go backwards on the relationship we were starting to build. Within 1 hour, within 20 minutes, excuse me, he called me back and he said, I think we have this under control. They're going to be released. They're being well taken care of and they're going to be fed. Now, within an hour, we had an agreement for their release. And subsequently, we saw the photographs, and I immediately called, and I condemned those photographs, as every American did, and it was a violation of a number of things. But the point I'm making is, if we hadn't done this agreement, and I didn't have a relationship with the foreign minister, then they probably would have been hostages, and they might still be there.
I would
So
imagine
there was a
that
virtue.
if President Obama wasn't president and anybody else was president, they would never have done this to begin with. Because Senator Lay's got a view of President Bush, and I share he made plenty of mistakes. But I'm really tired of this being walked all over. So, Mr. Secretary, I will help you where I can, but here's my question. Do you support the Iranian Sanctions Act reauthorization immediately?
Not immediately, because I think we are just beginning now to see the full implementation. I think we need to see how effectively and well they comply, and also what happens with respect to these other aspects of behavior. It doesn't expire till the end of the year. We can pass it in about 10 minutes. I don't think there's a need to rush here. I'd like to see how the implementation goes so we can do whatever we're doing advised by that process, which it seems to. Thank you.
Ms. Secretary, you've been very generous. Too quick, very quick. Are you the Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism legislation? Is the administration opposed to this? JASTA.
Yeah, JASTA. We have concerns about it. I think we'd like to work with you. We do have concerns about it because what it does, regrettably, because of the way it's structured, generally speaking, we've dealt with this with countries who are designated terrorist. If we wind up taking away sovereign immunity from a country that are not, that's a huge
In its
leap.
current form, you're opposed to it.
In our current form, we'd be very troubled by it because what it would do is really expose the United States of America to lawsuit and take away our sovereign immunity and create a terrible precedent in its current form.
Thank you. This just came out about an hour ago over in the AP that Iran arrests the father of a jailed U.S. citizen, Siamaknamaiz. What's the gentleman's name?
Siak Namazi.
That the Iranians apparently Monday arrested his father. Are you familiar with this?
I'm very familiar with this, and I I am engaged on it specifically, but I am not permitted,
Okay.
due to privacy reasons, to go into details here.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your service to our country, and we'll do everything we can to support your budget.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, very, very much. Thank you.